Have you ever found yourself stuck in a courtroom, just itching to escape the drama and the chaos? Well, I've got some news for you. Things could be a whole lot crazier. In fact, I've put together a list of the 20 craziest courtroom moments ever, and let me tell you, some of these cases are absolute wild rides. Check it out for yourself. Number 1. Franklin Williams. We all speak up for social justice, right? But this dude took it to a whole new level. He tried to portray himself as some kind of hero for black men and teenagers killed by police, dropping names like Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and Oscar Grant. But get this, the guy had a long history of robbing and victimizing people. He was a one-man crime wave. Judge Patricia Cosgrove had had enough of his antics and slapped him with a 33-year prison sentence. But even that wasn't enough to shut him up. During the proceedings, Judge John J. Russo had to order his mouth to be taped shut. Can you believe it? This guy was treated like a dog about to be put to sleep, as he put it. But he had no remorse and didn't take responsibility for his actions. It's a warning, guys. Crime doesn't pay, and you don't want to end up like Franklin Williams, with your mouth taped shut. Number 2. Keandra Cook. Keandra Cook had a rough time the last time she was in court, and this time was even crazier. Her defense attorney had promised her that she wouldn't go to prison, but she ended up getting a 20-year sentence. When Cook was in court, she seemed hesitant when the judge asked her if she wanted to say something, but then, in a soft voice, she spoke up and apologized for her actions to the victim's family and victims. But here's where things get even crazier. She said she had changed and learned her lesson from all of this. She even talked about wanting to inspire younger girls and youth to not make the same mistakes she did. It was like turning a new leaf or something. Wow. Number 3. Kyle Rittenhouse. During the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, the judge and prosecutor went head-to-head in a heated argument over inadmissible evidence. The judge warned the prosecutor to stay within the boundaries of the law and not to sway the jury. While judges are humans, they must maintain a minimum level of decency in court. The trial ended with Rittenhouse's acquittal. Number 4. Adrian Dunn. This ex-con had a full-on showdown with sheriff's deputies after being convicted of murder. This guy had already been to prison twice for possessing firearms, and had even committed another shooting before the murder he was on trial for. It's like he had no remorse and just kept heading down the wrong path. Number 5. Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham. This one's a real doozy. Erica Mae Butts and Shanita Latrice Cunningham just got life in prison for killing a 3-year-old girl. And man, they really did lose it when they heard the verdict. I mean, we're talking about collapsing on the floor, wailing and stuff. They had to be wheeled out in chairs. The craziest part? Butts' own mother was there, screaming at her daughter to get up while being physically thrown out of the room. And let's not forget the heinous crime they committed, beating that poor little girl to death with a belt and coat hangers. Yep, it's dark stuff. Number 6. Tony Farmer. This high school basketball star from Ohio named Tony Farmer had his whole future mapped out for him. But then, things took a dark turn and he ended up pleading guilty to some serious crimes. When the judge read out his sentence, Tony just collapsed to the ground in pure anguish. And get this, even his ex-girlfriend was in the gallery sobbing. She didn't want him to go to prison, but he got what he deserved. Number 7. Manson Bryant. Here, Bryant is found guilty of some pretty serious charges and gets sentenced to 22 years in prison. At first, he seems to be showing some remorse, saying he's sorry and respects the judge's decision. But just when you think it's over, he loses it when his sentence is extended to 28 years. He starts cussing out the judge and even accuses him of being a racist. Wow. Number 8. Jeffrey McDonald. This man lost control during an argument with his girlfriend and ended up taking her life. But wait, there's more. Instead of seeking medical attention for her, he propped up her lifeless body and took a cell phone photo of her. How messed up is that? He even admitted to taking the photo to show her the next day as a joke. He was sentenced to 4 to 12 years in prison, but even during his parole hearing, he couldn't explain why he did what he did. He just stood there, looking dead. Number 9. Michael McDonald. McDonald was accused of violating a no-contact order granted to his ex-wife after a contentious divorce and custody battle. The judge was concerned about McDonald's escalating behavior and instability and granted the motion to revoke his bond. But McDonald wasn't ready to surrender, and chaos ensued as officers struggled to restrain him. Take a look. Number 10. Alex Jones. You know the guy from InfoWars? Well, he was sued by the families of the Sandy Hook shooting victims for claiming the shooting was fake. During the trial, tensions rose between the judge and Jones's lawyer, Norm Pattis. In one instance, the judge scolded Pattis for interrupting, and Pattis hit back. It was tense. The jury gave the plaintiffs almost $1 billion in damages. Justice was served, but the drama didn't end there. Number 11. Michael Cox Jr. It happened in Roswell, New Mexico, where a man named Michael Cox Jr. was on trial for criminal sexual contact with a minor. When the verdict was announced, Cox lost his cool and lunged at Deputy DA Scott Key, who barely escaped being hit. Chaos erupted as a man from the gallery also joined the brawl. Number 12. Jerome Boggs and Blister Cook. Jerome Boggs, this convicted murderer, was on trial for the gruesome killings of Blister Cook and his 4-year-old son TJ. The family members were in the gallery waiting for justice to be served, and rightly so. But then, out of nowhere, one of the family members charged at Boggs, yelling things like, "Kill him and get him." The officers were barely able to control the situation, and it was total chaos in the courtroom. I mean, can you imagine being there? In the end, justice was served, and Boggs was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison with no chance for parole. Number 13, Darrell Brooks Jr. Brooks decided to represent himself in court for driving his car into a Christmas parade, killing 6 people and injuring dozens more. Can you believe that? And if that's not enough, he identified as a sovereign citizen, presenting bizarre legal theories and arguing with the judge about the most trivial of things. The judge warned him multiple times, but he persisted. He was found guilty of 76 criminal charges, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. Number 14, Jasmine Gordon and Clifford Thomas. This couple was sentenced for the death of their 3-year-old daughter. The child died of blunt force trauma while Clifford was babysitting her. Dwayne Smith, the child's actual father, was asked to deliver an impact statement, and he lost control, attacking Clifford. It was total chaos in the courtroom, and Gordon had an emotional breakdown. Number 15, Henry Segura. This guy was charged with the murder of his girlfriend, Brandy Peters, and her 3 children, one of whom was his own son. The courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution and defense argued over the motive of the murder. It was like watching a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. During cross-examination, things got even more heated when Segura was asked about what he told the victim, and he lied about the reason for his visit. The tension in the courtroom was so intense you could feel it. The judge had to intervene to calm things down, but the argument continued, as Segura's temper started to flare up. In the end, Segura was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Number 16, Stoneman Douglas. The Stoneman Douglas high school shooting trial was one of the most heartbreaking and emotional court proceedings ever. The accused, Nicholas Cruz, was found guilty of taking 17 innocent lives and injuring 17 others. The victims' families were understandably devastated and emotional during the trial. However, things took a turn for the worse when the defense team brought up the shooter's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder to explain his behavior. The prosecutor argued that it was a planned massacre with 16 aggravated factors. The judge lost her temper when the lawyer mentioned her children, and it just goes to show that emotions run high in the courtroom. Number 17, Jason Wilson and Lamoureux. It happened in Cedar City, Utah, where Tristan Lamoureux was being sentenced for killing his wife, Misty. As Misty's brother, Jason Wilson, approached the podium to deliver an impact statement, Lamoureux showed no remorse. In a fit of anger, Wilson lunged at Lamoureux, causing a scene straight out of a movie. While Lamoureux was sentenced to prison, surprisingly, Wilson wasn't charged for his outburst. Number 18, Michael Madison. Imagine being in a courtroom surrounded by families who have lost their loved ones to a heinous crime. The air is heavy with grief and pain. And then, just when you think it couldn't get any more intense, a father steps up to speak. Van Terry, the father of Sherelda Terry, has had enough. He can't forgive the clown who took his child. And then, he snaps. He lunges at the very man who caused so much suffering. But here's the thing. The killer was taunting the families, even smiling while they spoke. It's horrifying to think that someone could be so callous, so heartless. Number 19, Randall Moore. This man had no remorse for his estranged wife's death. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences and 25 years in prison for kidnapping, killing his wife, and shooting a police officer. The judge called him a piece of work and gave him a 25-year sentence for his despicable crimes. Number 20, Esteban Carpio. This convicted inmate was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of a police officer. During an interrogation in Providence, Esteban was left alone in the room with a police detective sergeant. And what did he do? He grabbed the detective's gun and shot him twice, killing him. Then he jumped out of the 3rd-floor window before being caught less than an hour later. But what's really wild is his family's reaction when he was sentenced to life in prison. They screamed and yelled about police brutality, which the FBI investigation later concluded did not occur. Alright guys, that's a wrap on our rundown of the 20 craziest courtroom moments ever. And let me tell you, in all seriousness, it's important to remember that these are real people with real lives and real consequences. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.